All right, good Tuesday afternoon. Thank you for hopping on NCSA Live. I'm David Kamisic with Next College Student Athlete. So thanks for tuning in. As we do every Tuesday, we're going to hit on a specific topic here covering the recruiting process, and certainly encourage you all to participate. So if you're tuning in, jot down any questions you have there at the bottom of the screen, whether it's through Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, whatever social media platform you're using to watch us. We want to get you guys involved. We like questions. We like involvement. We've got two great people who are here ready to answer all of your questions. So the topic today, though, is going to be an important one. It's September 1st tomorrow, which may not mean anything in your world necessarily, but it's an important date when it comes to the recruiting process. So we're going to dive into really what September 1st is, what it means, the connection that it has with Division I coaches, and dive into some tips as well for communicating with college coaches, knowing that, again, the floodgates open, so to speak, for certain grad classes and certain sports effective tomorrow. But as I mentioned, we have two great people joining me today. So at the bottom of the screen, we got Kyle Winters, recruiting manager, and then we've got one of our baseball recruiting coaches and the unofficial bringer of the morale at NCSA, Pat O'Malley. Kyle, we'll start with you. How are we doing?
Team morale, I'm ready to rock. Can't be happier than to spend the afternoon with David Kamisic and Pat O'Malley.
Pat, how are you?
I'm doing great. I mean, the hair right now in the chat in the video box looks fantastic. Kyle Winters brought the hair out today. I love it.
As yours is flowing past the bottom of the screen.
Yeah, I'm trying to cover it back, boys. But yeah.
You've got the Syndergaard going over there.
Yeah, I appreciate you, Kyle.
Baseball reference for those that don't know. All right, so Division I coaches effective tomorrow in a number of different sports will be able to start directly communicating with college or with student athletes in the junior class, or for the 2023s that are entering their junior year, have already started their junior year. A really important day in the recruiting process. So Kyle, let's start with you. Can you just kind of run through September 1st? What does it mean? What's the impact in recruiting? Why is it something that we're focusing on today?
Yeah, September 1st heading into junior year. It's a huge date for sports like baseball, softball, lacrosse. There's a few others in there, men's basketball. It's a huge date where Division I college coaches, they can start making direct contact with student athletes. When we talk about direct contact, we're talking about phone calls. We're talking about direct emails. We're talking about text messages, scholarship offers, which in some sports like baseball, those offers are coming a little bit earlier. We might touch on that, but it's a date where basically the floodgates open for all communication with student athletes and with college coaches. And sorry, men's basketball is not one of those. I misspoke on that. But it's a huge date where they're going to start making direct phone calls to the prospects they've been looking at for the past 2+ years. And really, recruiting goes into high drive. It goes into the highest gear and goes into overdrive, and things get really serious starting here for most sports.
Jim, I know we've got a graphic that we can pull up here that'll kind of dive into the sports a little bit. But again, under the NCAA rules, coaches, they have restrictions, they have limitations in terms of when and how they can be reaching out to student athletes. So for a D1 football coach, lacrosse, softball, baseball, women's basketball, they've been able to send information out to student athletes more generically, letters, questionnaires, camp invites. All other sports, really June 15th. So we passed that date about 2.5 months ago. That's for Division I. Again, Division II schools, June 15th between sophomore and junior year is when the floodgates open. Division III, NAIA junior colleges, they have no restrictions in terms of the amount of communication. But again, September 1st tomorrow for women's basketball, football, lacrosse, softball, baseball, anyone who is now a junior in high school is going to be able to directly have conversations with those college coaches. Pat, I want to turn this over to you. You obviously work as a former college baseball coach. You work with a lot of our student athletes, connect with a lot of college coaches. What's that process like from a college coach preparing for this date? You know, we talk about September 1st. If you're a college coach, what have you been doing up to this point, and how does tomorrow change your approach or what allowing the conversations, the direct conversations to happen?
Yeah, I think, as a former college coach, and especially sending guys off from my JUCO to the D1 level, these guys are getting started a little bit earlier, and not exactly with communication, but identifying those prospects. Now that September 1st, which guys seems to come earlier and earlier every year, now that dialogue meter starts working towards the offer. So we go from the email exchanges and the camps to the phone calls and the family Zooms, the Zoom sessions, I should say. And as we work from that initial phone call to coming to watch you guys play, getting you on campus for a workout, taking those official visits, getting that, eventual offer, guys. This is all going on now. And not everyone in here is going to be a D1 guy, which is okay. There's great baseball, great sports at every level, and more importantly, great education, academics at every level. But understand, if you're a D1 guy at this point, doesn't mean Vanderbilt's going to call you tomorrow. But if you're one of those guys, you're getting identified, and that communication is going to start moving in the right direction.
Pat, I want to stick with you. And it doesn't mean recruiting starts tomorrow, right? Again, college coaches, and we've got a commitment that we're going to share later of a kid who's a sophomore in high school this year. But it doesn't start your junior year. That's a big misconception. It's something that we hear from a lot of families where they think, all right, now that D1 coaches can do this, now we got to start a recruiting process. There's a lot of steps that go in along the way. You talked about camps, some of the questionnaires. Can you just dive a little bit deeper into that? What are the steps along the way that the coaches take, and then how it builds up to this point with September 1st with the evaluating and building that prospect list and crossing names off and circling names?
Yeah, that's another great point. Like I said, with September 1st, recruiting seems to start earlier and earlier every year, especially in baseball. Being a former junior college coach, I'd be talking to D1 coaches all the time that said, Pat, thanks. Your kids are awesome, but we're already looking at kids 2 years younger already. And at the time, being a young, assistant coach, that was pretty crazy to me. But when it comes to making that dialogue, making those connections, guys, questionnaires are super important to start that dialogue. Get identified as a prospect, get in their database. And as we go on, it goes from the questionnaires to the emailing to the phone calls, so on and so forth, guys. So no matter where we're at, if we're sitting in a junior high classroom today, or if we're at the high school level, guys, there's always something we can be doing in recruiting, no matter what sport you play.
Perfect segue. Kyle Winters, let's bring you in. What are things that student athletes can be doing early on in the recruiting process? Again, there's a lot that student athletes can do to be proactive and not just wait until these days or wait for coaches to find them. But it's really important, earlier you can start the process freshman, sophomore year. Student athletes can still proactively reach out to these Division I coaches and these Division II coaches that, again, have these certain dates. Again, Division II schools more so June 15th, D1 September 1st. But there's a lot that student athletes can be doing to get on coaches' radars. But again, there's limitations those coaches have in terms of the response they can have to a student athlete.
Yeah, despite the NCAA recruiting rules, athletes can actually reach out to coaches at any time they want. The NCAA rules only limit when college coaches can actually contact the student athletes back. So as a freshman, as an eighth grader, as an underclassman, you can be building up a recruiting profile on our website. Huge thing to be doing. That's something you can be doing at any time after you're 13 to start having an online presence for college coaches to see what type of student athlete you are, your projectability, your grades over the course of high school, a video over the course of high school, your schedule, stats, everything that you've built, your resume over the course of high school to get recruited. And for you to be sending that out to college coaches, to be proactive, because those coaches, they can be reading your emails. They can be taking a look at you from those emails. And so that's something we talk about, from the questionnaires like Pat talked about. Where do you go from there? It's starting to make actual headway with these college coaches, making sure they know who you are past just a questionnaire. So having that profile and having a great resume with video is a good starting point to show coaches who you are now and update them over time as you continue to grow, as you develop, and show them that you're someone who's going to get better, continue developing, get stronger, and you have skills from a starting point that can only get better moving forward from there. So it really shows your projectability from early on in the recruiting process.
Right. So once again, freshmen, you can email any college coach in the country that you want. Now that coach, again, depending on the division level, depending on the sport, they're more than likely not going to be able to email you directly back as a freshman or sophomore. That's why these dates are so important in the recruiting process. Again, we talk about September 1st tomorrow for, again, these Division I sports, going back to June 15th for all Division II schools and some Division I schools as well. So again, knowing that's important. So there's a lot of tips, I think, Pat, that you certainly talk to families about all the time in terms of how to communicate with college coaches. So for those that are freshmen or sophomore that are starting to think about this and trying to figure out what to do, a lot of different things they can do. There's a tons of colleges out there. Obviously, a good starting place is probably narrowing down kind of a list or trying to figure out, all right, what schools would I even want to be reaching out to or considering? How do you even begin to start that process as a student athlete?
This is probably, in my world, the most important step, no matter where you're at, if you're a younger guy, like junior high, or even underclassmen going to upperclassmen years, whatever it may be, getting evaluated by a credible source goes a long way, guys. In the baseball world, there's over 1,700 programs. And as much as I'd like to say in your busy teenage years that you're going to email thousands of programs, that's just not going to happen. You know, I know at NCSA, we have our top matches feature for a reason. You get evaluated by a college coach or our college coaches on staff, depending where you're at, to start focusing on schools that not only fit your athletic skill set, but academically, location-wise, things like that, guys. So I think the big thing to take away, getting judged as a complete student athlete and going from there as you keep maturing. I know Coach Kyle touched on it, really showing that progression throughout your game in the classroom as well is going to go a long way as well.
Yeah, so being able to narrow it down and have that conversation, what's going to be important to you as a student athlete, as a family, is it financially driven, is it location, is it division level? There's a lot of factors that go into that process. So the earlier you can do that, the better. One easy way, Pat, to take that initial step is to email a college coach. I know we get that question a lot of times. What are you looking for as a college coach, as a student athlete? What should you be sending to that college coach to kind of get that introductory email?
Yeah, I think depending where you're at in the process, obviously, it matters email-wise. But if you're a younger guy or an old guy, introduce yourself. Make sure you have your research done in that second paragraph on that school. Don't be just copy and pasting. Make it clear that you took time out of your day and did your research on that school. So introduction, what you like about that school, what stood out to you. And lastly, a couple quick questions. Coach, after looking at my video, what do I need to improve on? Coach, am I a good fit for your program now? Things like that is definitely what you want to do, because if you're not a D1 guy now, it doesn't mean you can't be down the road. So you want to see what you need to do better to get to that level eventually.
And Kyle, you talk about this all the time in the Facebook, a lot of the conversations that we have. It's okay not to be a D1 guy as well, right? You guys talk about that all the time, Pat. I mean, you came from the junior college level as a coach, and you played at different levels, and understanding that you're not a finished product, and that there is steps to kind of get to this point in terms of what college coaches are looking for. Kyle, talk a little bit more about just in terms of the understanding of spreading it out, right? Don't just focus on D1s, focus on some D2s, D3s, cast that net wide and see what bites and nibbles might be out there.
Yeah, we hear from parents a lot that they're worried about starting the recruiting process early because they're interested in Division I schools, and they're afraid if they reach out to Division I schools as freshmen, they're student athlete, they're not fully developed, they still have a lot of growing to do, they haven't hit puberty yet. I know I was in that scenario. I grew 9 inches throughout my first 2 years of high school. But for college coaches, they're not necessarily looking for a finished product as a freshman in high school. And as a student athlete, of course, you want to go to a Division I school. Everybody wants to play at the highest level. You want to be in the College World Series. You want to be in that NCAA tournament. You want to be playing in the national championship, Orange Bowl, whatever it may be. But it's just not realistic. So for a student athlete, for a parent, it's super smart to be casting a wider net through all division levels, being able to get your information in front of not just Division I schools, but D2, D3, NAIA, junior college. Pick out 10 at each level and have that be your starting point as I'm going to cast a wide net, not put all my eggs in one basket. And coaches, they're not going to turn away a student athlete. They're not going to look at a student athlete necessarily as a freshman who's underdeveloped, who hasn't grown yet, who hasn't hit puberty, hasn't had their growth spurt, and just write them off. If they see skills, if they see projectability, if they see someone that looks like they can turn into the type of player that would be a good fit for their school down the road, if they grow, get bigger, get stronger, it's someone they're going to pay a little closer attention to. It's someone they're going to put on their radar a little bit more. And for you as a parent and you as a student athlete, it's a good way to start showcasing that projectability I talked about and show them how you grow over time. Because as coaches, they're looking for someone who's always going to be growing, always going to be getting better. They're not looking for a finished product, even as a senior in high school. So hopefully that helps with a little more comfort in trying to get in front of coaches a little bit earlier as a freshman or as a sophomore, or even as a great 8th grader in some cases.
Yeah, so again, some tips here. Narrow down that list. Start having conversations about what's going to be important to you as a family in terms of the college decision. Again, is it primarily athletics focus? How much is the academic side, financial, location, all that? Don't be afraid to send that introductory email. Get a video put together, put that information together, get that out to coaches, get that profile built with NCSA, send that out to schools. Student athletes can pick up the phone and call coaches as well. I know that's an intimidating thing for maybe a 14 or 15-year-old to be picking up a phone and trying to call a college coach. But again, if you're that serious and you're that interested in the program, that can't hurt. Again, as a college coach, for me, that's going to show a whole lot of interest if a student athlete is picking up the phone and trying to call me as well. The last way, Pat, and I want to bring you back in for this one, is social media. Obviously, social media has played a huge part in the recruiting process. What do you hear from parents? What do you hear from coaches in terms of how social media is used? I think there's some myths and also some facts about how it can be misleading in terms of getting recruited through social media, but there are certain aspects of social media that can help a recruit in this process as well.
Yeah, let's start with the parents first. Guys, at the end of the day, this is your recruiting process. Mom and dad can support you guys. They can take the film. They can drive you to the events, whatever it may be. This is your recruiting process, guys. When you're tweeting at coaches, when you're putting stuff on your Twitter, make sure it's coming from you. You know, the easiest way to get crossed off a recruiting board is seeing mom and dad all over Twitter going crazy. No, I want to make sure it's coming from the athlete, and the athlete is making the communication, guys. We want to make sure that's clear. On the college coaching side, that's where I'm hearing that from. You know, these coaches want to make sure they're interacting with the student athletes. If they're interested, Twitter, you know, even Instagram in some sports is a great resource to use, but make sure you're using it responsibly and professionally, guys. You know, everything you do is going to be a job interview for these college coaches, and don't get crossed off for something that goes on social media. These coaches know, trust me, we've all been there.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen that before where kids get offers pulled or they stop getting recruited by a school because something posted on social media. So again, be certainly responsible for that. But you brought up a great point there in terms of the student athlete really needs to drive this process. As a parent, you're going to be supportive. You're going to be having their back and doing everything you can to help them out. But at the end of the day, the student athlete's the one that's taking that roster spot or getting that scholarship offer. So the student athlete can really be the one to take the initiative with that. But again, use social media. You know, use the ability to direct message coaches or like coaches. It's also a great opportunity just to learn about the program. You know, follow not just the coaches, but follow that athletic program. Learn about the fit, the success, the guys they play, the guys they recruit. A lot of that information can certainly be helpful as well. So again, big day in recruiting tomorrow, September 1st. Again, for softball, lacrosse, baseball, women's basketball, football, for any 2023, so junior and high school. That's when the doors are going to open up. So coaches will be picking up the phone. They'll be calling the top recruits that they've already been identifying and evaluating in a lot of cases since 8th grade freshman year. So again, we have all this information on our website, ncsasports.org. If you're trying to figure out your specific sport, your grad year, a student athlete, or the differences in division levels. Again, Division I's a little bit different than Division II versus D3, NAI, and JUCO that really don't have any limitations in terms of the amount of contact or when they can be contacting a student athlete. Starting to get some questions in here, so let's pull up a 3-box if we can. That's some TV talk for you guys right there, a 3-box. This is a great baseball one from Gerardo. So we got 2 baseball guys here. What kind of level should a player be at on a D1? So batting speed, exit velocity, etc. Kyle, you were a D1 recruit. What popped for you? And then Pat, I'll let you pick apart Kyle's answer.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear Pat's takeaways on this. I mean, it depends. Obviously there's a hierarchy of Division I schools as well. But as a Division I prospect myself, I had a full ride scholarship to the University of New Mexico, which is probably a mid-level Division I school. To kind of give you some perspective, my senior year in high school, I was pitching anywhere from 90 to 95 miles an hour. I gave up maybe just a couple runs. I had a .79 ERA. My senior year of high school, I hit 10 home runs and wasn't recruited offensively as a batter. So you have to be good. When we talk about the exit velocity, they didn't really have that when I was going through the process. I would guess Pat's going to say you probably want to be somewhere around 100 for exit velocity for 60-yard dash, probably sub 7 in a lot of cases. You're going to want to be a big, strong athlete with a ton of potential that has 5 tools: speed, arm strength, power, agility, fielding, the full package. It's very difficult to get recruited to play Division I baseball for sure.
So Kyle used to hit 90-95. Pat, I hear you can still give me 68 from the side here.
Yeah, so I've been known to sling it 68 from the sidewinder. Chad Bradford at times, a couple of rec leagues out here. But guys, I call it the magic 8, 9s, and 10s, and Kyle touched on it. Guys, if we want to play D1 ball, metrics are so important this day and age. The 80s, the 90s, even the 100s in some cases on your athletic metrics on your profile will go a long way. But Coach Kyle hit the nail on the head, and I'm not going to pick apart his answer. He was awesome. Tools. You have to have these tools. The more tools that you have, guys, the more recruitable and more marketable you're going to be for college coaches. I think David mentioned it earlier. I was a JUCO D3 guy. I probably had a tool and a half. So Kyle Winters, this guy had some tools. Google him. So realistically, guys, if you have tools, you can play college ball to go along with your grades and other intangibles, but you got to have tools, guys.
I've never heard of a 1.5 tool player.
Yep.
That's so funny. All right, question from Mike Campbell. So basically, it's never too early. Pat, we'll start with you on this one.
Mike Campbell, it is never too early to get started. I work with hundreds of athletes. I've worked with hundreds of college commits, guys. The ones that had the most offers and the most success trusted the process. They were process driven and they listened to the feedback. Those guys had the most success. The guys that took control of their recruiting process from an early age and celebrated that commitment, guys. Absolutely.
Kyle, thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think this might be a familiar Mike Campbell that played at South Carolina, and he's absolutely right. To kind of give you guys an idea for South Carolina, I pull it up real quick. That's the type of school that they probably have commits in the 2025 class right now. There's just really not a time that's too early when it comes to baseball, especially considering college coaches. They're not necessarily looking for game footage. They're looking for skills video. It's not necessarily a prerequisite to play on varsity. It helps if you play some travel ball, but had I known that in high school, it would have been huge. I didn't play on varsity until halfway through my junior year. So there's just so much in baseball you can be doing to help yourself out and don't necessarily have to rely on, like football, playing varsity Friday nights. That's your only chance to go out and play and show your ability and show your skills. Baseball is a sport where you can be proactive very early on. And with COVID, the sports like football, basketball, you're able to make skills video now. It's been a shift where you can help yourself early on, even if you're maybe not playing at that varsity level yet. There's just so much you can be doing early on in the process to put yourself in a better position for later in the process versus just kind of waiting and hoping that things progress and work out well and things just kind of line up, because for so many thousands of student athletes, it just doesn't go that way.
Yeah, and I think it's important to know, we didn't really touch on this, but it's an important piece. You don't have to be a junior or senior to get an offer. Right? We see kids getting offers and committing freshman year, sophomore year in some cases. So these dates are important in terms of the direct contact that coaches can have. But Pat, coaches are able to figure out ways to get offers to kids prior to September 1st, so tomorrow. So again, there's a ton of 2024s, 25s that have offers, or some that are already committing to schools. That can happen in recruiting prior to this September 1st date too. So again, it's not just junior year hits and all of a sudden all these offers start flying out. All sorts of sports, not just baseball, basketball, we see it all the time. Women's sports, especially freshman, sophomore, you can still get offers. Pat, take that.
Yeah. So David, that's completely true. In most situations with some of my guys, it's, hey, come to this camp, but call me at this time before. Guys, they're identifying these prospects. If they want to get these verbals out per se, they will. You just have to be not only good enough, but on their timeline in recruiting, which sometimes people don't understand. So like you guys touched on, 24s, 25s, 26s, already starting to get those looks and getting identified. Never too early, but we got to have the tools at the right time and keep putting the work in.
Cool. We got a question from YouTube here, so we're going to pop this one up and see where we can go. So how is recruiting different in NCAA from countries outside of the USA? So for international student athletes, how does the recruiting process change? I'll start with this one. I think first and foremost for international student athletes, it really involves being more proactive than even we're telling student athletes within the United States to be. Again, college coaches aren't going to be flocking across the ocean to go visit student athletes or to go see kids play. So having that online profile, having video, being proactive early on is really important. There's a lot of little nuances for international student athletes in terms of grades transferring over and student visas, all that sort of stuff. So international recruiting is a little bit different for college coaches and certainly for student athletes. But again, as a student athlete, you need to have an online presence. You need to be proactively reaching out to schools and not just waiting for, again, a coach to somehow find you. So again, all the proactivity we're talking about, the importance of starting early is probably that much more important when it comes to international student athletes. So last question that I'm going to take here, where we're kind of hitting the half-hour point, is from Daniel. So in terms of getting video, should we contact my son's high school coach about getting film together? Kyle, what's the best way to go about getting some film?
Yeah, Danny, you certainly can contact the high school coach. That's not a guarantee that they are videotaping the games. Hopefully they are. A lot of high schools will use applications like Huddle or Crossover for basketball. There are some different things out there. So definitely talk with your coach, but I wouldn't say rely on the coach that they are 100% going to be videotaping all of the games. You can get a camera. Cameras, I remember back in the day, my parents with a giant shoulder Canon Laws rocket of a camera videotaping my games. Now they're handheld. It's a lot easier to videotape. It's a lot easier to set up a tripod. It's a lot easier to do it on a cell phone, which is not necessarily ideal probably, but any way you can. I wouldn't rely on anybody else. Make sure you're getting as much footage as you possibly can on your own. If you're able to, get a camera, videotape the games. We have a great video editing department that can help you guys put together highlight videos. If the coach can help out when it comes to recruiting in general, that's a giant bonus. At the end of the day, I wouldn't necessarily always rely on the coach for everything, as they have their own job, life, family, 30, 40 kids in the program that they're potentially going to be trying to help. So it's hard for them to focus on each individual student athlete. So, get any way you can at the very end of it. If you need to, get a camera and do it yourself.
Yeah, and some sports are looking for more of a skills video than actually highlight video. So again, we have all those video guidelines on our website, ncsasports.org. So check it out by sport. We also help you kind of get an idea as to what camera angles coaches are looking for and get you all the bells and whistles there. So again, with the NCAA, they have certain rules in place. September 1st, an important date coming up here again tomorrow for lacrosse, softball, baseball, women's basketball, football. The direct communication can really open up for those juniors, and we're going to see a lot of activity scrolling in here as well. But to wrap it up, as we always do, we want to recognize some of our recent commitments. Pat, I know you're really excited about one of these, but Kyle, we'll start with you with Chris.
Yeah, first commit today is Chris Marcellus. He's a 2022 grad baseball player, so just starting up his senior year, won't play his high school senior season until the spring. Already finished up, heading to Grambling State. His older brother used NCSA as well, committed to Bethany College in Kansas. Very proactive. He emailed Grambling through his profile, had 50 views, did a ton of work, was very proactive in this process, and was able to help himself with a commitment to Grambling. So congrats to you, Chris.
Probably more than a 1.5 tool player if he's going to Grambling State.
Yeah, he's probably better than Pat O'Malley.
Yeah. All right, Pat, this is your guy.
Let's talk about another guy that was definitely a better ball player than me. So, yeah, Tyler, no doubt, one of my favorite families. I mean, they were locked in from the get-go. And I'm not talking just baseball. They came in with a plan. High academics. They had some grant money with some family connections, things like that, guys. And then he put the work in. Put the last 2 years in, really fine-tuning his skill set. If you look at his perfect game, his PG, his NCSA, we talked about showing progression and being projectable. This kid checked off all the boxes on that timeline when it was all said and done. And it's the work that he put in, and I'm proud of him. Absolutely.
What year is he?
2023.
So he's heading into his junior year. So again, before even Division I coaches can technically call Tyler, he's made his verbal commitment to UConn. So again, just showing the way the recruiting process works. And again, these rules are in place, but there are ways for coaches to get offers out earlier. And again, these Division I schools a lot of times are fighting at each other to get these early offers to these high-level kids. Last one we're going to wrap it up with is Sumner Nenninger, heading to Elon University, a Division I program in North Carolina, I believe. Kyle Winters, I'm looking at you.
Yes, sir. Elon, right there with High Point and UC Greensboro, great area of the country.
So small D1 school. So congratulations to Sumner, continuing his college career at the Division I level as well. Well, again, a lot of facts, a lot of numbers, a lot of information. I couldn't have done it without these two guys, Pat O'Malley, Kyle Winters, who just two of the good guys, at NCSA and good guys in life. So appreciate you guys as always. Any other thoughts on September 1st here before we sign off? Pat, maybe from you. I mean, you work with a lot of the clients. You work with a lot of families who are trying to figure out this process. What thoughts do you have here?
Yeah, I guess to wrap up today, guys, and Coach Cal touched on it. If we're not there yet athletically, if we maybe struggle a little bit because of COVID academically, it's not too late, guys. Cast a wide net, do your research. If you put the work in, everything will be just fine, guys. And NCSA definitely helps with that. That's for sure.
Yeah. So if the phone doesn't blow up tomorrow, if the text messages aren't, jumping off the hook, again, still a lot of opportunity. Don't need to panic, but again, a lot of different opportunities out there across all different sports. Kyle, anything else to add on your end?
Yeah, take the first step. I mean, recruiting isn't anything. The first step's the hardest one. You're not going to know what direction to go. You're not going to know exactly what the student athlete's looking for in a lot of cases. We're talking about teenagers whose minds change all the time, and that's okay. But take the first step. Once you guys start taking steps, you're moving in the right direction. You can continue moving forward from there and bump around and eventually find the right path for you guys. But taking that first step is the hardest versus, again, just waiting and hoping things are going to happen, because for so many thousands of student athletes, it doesn't just happen. So be the ones who take the steps in the right direction, and things will happen for you.
Cool. Awesome. Well, again, appreciate the time, fellas. Appreciate everyone tuning in. Again, NCSA Live, we're back here every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Central Standard Time. So Patrick, Kyle, thank you as always, gentlemen, and hopefully we'll see everyone back here next week, and hope everyone has a great rest of the week.
Thank you, David.